At family brunch, they called me a failure, then Dad's boss said, "She's the one who promoted me." The sound of clinking silverware against china always made my stomach twist into knots. Not because I was hungry. I'd lost my appetite the moment I walked through the front door of my childhood home. It was the sound of another family brunch, another monthly ritual where I'd sit in the corner like a spectator to everyone else's success story. "Pass the orange juice, please," my brother Marcus said, adjusting his new Rolex. He'd been flashing it around all morning, making sure everyone noticed the gleaming metal catching the sunlight streaming through Mom's lace curtains. "That's a beautiful watch, son," Dad said, his voice carrying that tone of pride I'd heard directed at everyone but me. "Promotion treating you well?" Marcus grinned, puffing out his chest. "Senior account manager now. 40% raise, company car, and they're fast-tracking me for the executive program." He took a sip of his mimosa, like he was savoring liquid gold. "Jennifer thinks we should start looking at houses in Brookhaven. You know, the gated community near the country club." Mom practically glowed. "Oh, Marcus, that's wonderful, honey. Brookhaven is such a prestigious area." I kept my eyes on my plate, moving scrambled eggs around with my fork. The eggs were getting cold, but I didn't care. I'd learned long ago that family brunches weren't about the food. They were about the performance. And I was always the understudy, never the star. "What about you, David?" Dad turned to my younger brother, who was scrolling through his phone between bites of bacon. "How's the MBA program going?" David looked up with that confident smile that had gotten him through every challenge in his life. "Crushing it, Dad. Just got selected for the summer internship at Goldman Sachs. Professor Williams says I'm one of the top 3 students in my class." He paused for dramatic effect. "Oh, and I'm thinking about proposing to Sarah after graduation." The table erupted in excited chatter. Mom jumped up to hug David, Dad slapped him on the back, and Marcus raised his mimosa in a toast. "To my little brother, the future Wall Street king." I forced a smile and raised my orange juice glass, playing my part in the family theater. But inside, I felt like I was shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller until I might disappear entirely. "And what about our Imani?" Aunt Gloria asked, her voice carrying that false sweetness that adults use when they're about to embarrass you. She'd been quiet most of the morning, but I should have known she was just waiting for her moment. "Still working on that little internet thing?" The whole table turned to look at me. 12 pairs of eyes, all waiting for me to explain myself, to justify my existence at this table of achievements and accolades. Yes, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm still working on my business." Uncle Raymond chuckled, the sound bouncing off the walls of the dining room. "Internet business? What is it exactly? Do you sell things on eBay?" "It's not eBay, Raymond." My cousin Brianna jumped in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "It's more like, what did you call it last time, Imani? Angel investing? Like those people on that Shark TV show?" The table erupted in laughter. Not the warm, inclusive laughter of shared joy, but the sharp, cutting laughter of people who thought they were in on a joke. And I was the punchline. "Angel investing," Marcus repeated, shaking his head. "That's cute, Imani. You need actual money to be an angel investor. Lots of it. And experience," David added, his MBA knowledge on full display. "These investment firms don't just hand out money to anyone with a laptop and a dream." Dad sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. He set down his fork and looked at me with those eyes I'd seen 1,000 times before, the eyes of a father who loved his daughter but didn't understand her. "You're smart, Imani," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You've always been the smartest one in this family. But at some point, you have to stop living in fantasy land and get serious about your life." The words hit me like a physical blow. Fantasy land. That's what they thought of my dreams, my ambitions, my carefully constructed plans. Fantasy land. "I mean, look at your brothers," Dad continued, gesturing toward Marcus and David. "They've got real careers, real futures. Marcus is buying a house. David's got Goldman Sachs knocking down his door. What do you have to show for all this time you've spent on your computer?" I wanted to tell him. God, how I wanted to tell him. I wanted to pull out my phone and show him my bank account balance, the one that had more zeros than Marcus's salary and David's trust fund combined. I wanted to tell him about the companies I'd saved, the jobs I'd created, the lives I'd changed. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded and smiled, the same smile I'd perfected over years of these brunches. The smile that said I was listening, that I accepted their judgment, that I knew my place in this family hierarchy. "You're right, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I should probably think about getting more serious." "That's my girl," he said, reaching over to pat my hand. "Maybe you could talk to Marcus about opportunities at his company. Or David could introduce you to some of his business school friends. I'm sure they could help you find something stable." Stable. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. They wanted me to be stable, predictable, easy to understand. They wanted me to fit into their neat little boxes with their neat little labels. "The most important thing," Mom chimed in, refilling my orange juice glass, "is that you're happy, sweetheart. But happiness comes from security, from knowing you can pay your bills and plan for the future." I nodded again, playing my role perfectly. The dutiful daughter, accepting wisdom from her elders. The disappointment of the family, grateful for their concern and guidance. But inside, I was calculating. I was remembering the numbers from my latest investment, the company I'd just helped restructure, the hundreds of jobs I'd saved with a single decision. I was thinking about the patents I'd identified, the market opportunities I'd spotted, the future I was building piece by piece. They had no idea what I'd built. They had no idea who I really was. And for now, I wanted to keep it that way. The conversation moved on to other topics: Marcus's new car, David's upcoming finals, and Gloria's vacation plans. I sat quietly, listening to the familiar rhythm of family chatter, feeling like an outsider looking in on a life I'd never quite fit into. But that was okay, because while they were talking about their small victories and modest dreams, I was planning something bigger. Something that would change everything. I just had to be patient a little longer. The brunch would end, like it always did, with hugs and promises to see each other soon. I'd drive home to my apartment, where my real life waited, where spreadsheets and financial reports told a different story than the one my family believed. For now, I was content to be their disappointment, their cautionary tale, their reminder of what happened when you chased dreams that seemed too big. But soon, very soon, they'd learn the truth. And when they did, everything would change. 6 months ago, I was sitting in my apartment at 2 a.m., laptop glowing in the darkness, scrolling through investment opportunities that most people wouldn't even consider. That's when I found it, a small logistics tech company called Urban Flow Solutions, buried in a pile of failed ventures and desperate funding requests. The company was 3 weeks away from bankruptcy. Their burn rate was astronomical, their leadership was scattered, and their investors had already written them off as a total loss. Most angel investors had passed on them months ago. The smart money was staying far away from Urban Flow Solutions. But I wasn't most investors. While everyone else saw a sinking ship, I saw something different. Buried deep in their corporate filings, hidden beneath layers of financial disaster, was a patent that made my heart race. Patent US 10-847-392, an algorithm for optimizing last-mile delivery routes in urban environments using real-time traffic data and predictive analytics. I spent 3 days analyzing that patent, running scenarios, modeling market potential. The technology was revolutionary. It could reduce delivery times by 40% and cut fuel costs by 30%. In a world where everyone wanted their packages delivered yesterday, this was pure gold. The problem wasn't the technology, it was everything else. Urban Flow Solutions was run by brilliant engineers who couldn't balance a checkbook. They'd burned through their initial funding on fancy offices and expensive equipment instead of focusing on market validation. Their CEO, a nice guy named Martin Wessler, was a coding genius but couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag. That's where Indigo Spark came in. I'd created Indigo Spark 2 years earlier as my anonymous investment vehicle. No one knew that the mysterious angel investor group making strategic investments across the tech sector was actually a 28-year-old woman working from her studio apartment in Midtown. The name was intentionally vague, the paperwork was layers deep, and all communications went through my attorney. Being anonymous wasn't just about privacy, it was about power. When you're young, female, and don't have an MBA from Harvard, people make assumptions. They question your judgment, second-guess your decisions, and treat you like you're playing with toy money. But when you're a mysterious investment group with a track record of successful ventures, suddenly everyone listens. I called Martin Wessler on a Tuesday morning in November. His voice cracked when I introduced myself as the managing partner of Indigo Spark. "I've been following your company," I told him, keeping my voice steady and professional. "The technology is impressive, but the execution needs work. We're in a difficult position right now," he admitted. "The board is pushing for liquidation. We've got maybe 3 weeks before we have to shut down." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm calling." Indigo Spark is prepared to invest $2 million in Urban Flow Solutions, but it comes with conditions. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "What kind of conditions?" he finally asked. "Total operational restructuring, new leadership team, revised business model, and I get final approval on all major decisions for the next 18 months. I could hear him breathing, probably calculating whether he was desperate enough to accept such demanding terms. "Mr. Wessler," I continued, "your technology is worth $50 million in the right hands. But in the wrong hands, it's worth nothing. I'm offering you the chance to be in the right hands." The deal closed within a week. I brought in Sarah Chen, a logistics expert I'd worked with before, to serve as interim CEO. Martin stayed on as CTO, focusing on what he did best, the technology. I restructured their entire operations, cutting unnecessary expenses while investing heavily in market research and customer acquisition. The transformation was surgical. I identified which employees were essential and which were dead weight. I renegotiated their office lease, moving them to a smaller but more efficient space. I created partnerships with 3 major e-commerce platforms to beta test their delivery optimization system. Most importantly, I kept my identity completely hidden. Every decision, every communication, every strategic move came through official channels. Sarah Chen thought she was working with a traditional investment firm. Martin Wessler believed he was dealing with a well-funded group of anonymous investors. The results were immediate and dramatic. Within 2 months, Urban Flow Solutions had their first major client, a regional delivery company that saw a 35% improvement in efficiency after implementing the system. Within 4 months, they were profitable. Within 6 months, they were expanding to 3 new cities. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, tracking every metric, analyzing every report, feeling the deep satisfaction that comes from turning vision into reality. While my family thought I was wasting my time on some vague internet thing, I was orchestrating the revival of an entire company. The best part? Nobody knew it was me. I attended their company meetings via video call, my face hidden behind the Indigo Spark logo. I reviewed their financial reports under pseudonyms. I made million-dollar decisions while sitting in my pajamas, eating takeout Chinese food. Urban Flow Solutions was now valued at $38 million. My initial $2 million investment was worth nearly $12 million on paper. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was proving that I could take something broken and make it beautiful. That I could see opportunities where others saw only problems. That I could build something meaningful while everyone else was focused on playing it safe. My family wanted stability. They wanted me to get a regular job, climb a corporate ladder, follow a predictable path. Instead, I was creating ladders for other people to climb. And they had no idea. 3 months after Urban Flow Solutions stabilized, I was reviewing their quarterly expansion report when I saw something that made my blood freeze. There, buried in the appendix of their new logistics partnerships, was a name I recognized immediately: Harold Cole, my father. I stared at the screen for a full minute, reading and rereading the entry. Harold Cole, Senior Operations Coordinator, Mid-Atlantic Distribution Services. The report detailed how Urban Flow's technology had revolutionized Mid-Atlantic's delivery network, making them 30% more efficient and saving them nearly $2 million in operational costs. My hands were shaking as I opened a new browser tab and searched for Mid-Atlantic Distribution Services. The company website looked outdated, with stock photos of smiling warehouse workers and generic corporate language about delivering excellence. But when I dug deeper into their recent news section, I found what I was looking for. Mid-Atlantic Distribution Partners with Tech Innovator to Revolutionize Operations, read the headline from 4 months ago. The article was brief, but it explained everything. Mid-Atlantic had been struggling with rising fuel costs and customer complaints about delayed deliveries. They were hemorrhaging money and facing serious pressure from their parent company to turn things around quickly. That's when they became one of Urban Flow Solutions' first major clients. I called Sarah Chin immediately. "Sarah, it's Indigo Spark," I said, my voice carefully modulated to hide my panic. "I need more details about the Mid-Atlantic Distribution Partnership. Specifically, I want to understand the impact on their workforce." "Of course," Sarah replied, clearly pleased by my interest. "It's actually one of our biggest success stories. They were about to downsize significantly, planning to lay off nearly 40% of their staff. But our optimization system was so effective that not only did they avoid layoffs, they actually expanded operations and hired 15 new people." My chest tightened. What kind of layoffs were they planning? Mostly middle management and senior coordinators. The parent company had identified those positions as redundant. She paused, pulling up her files. "Actually, I have the original workforce reduction plan here somewhere. Let me see. Yes, here it is." They were planning to eliminate 12 senior coordinator positions in the first wave. I closed my eyes, already knowing what I would find when I asked the next question. "Do you happen to have the list of positions that were saved?" "I do. We actually used this as a case study for how technology can preserve jobs instead of eliminating them." I heard papers rustling on her end. Harold Cole was one of the senior coordinators who would have been laid off. Actually, he's become something of a champion for our system within the company. His supervisor tells me he's been instrumental in training other employees on the new processes. The irony was so sharp it physically hurt. While my family sat around the brunch table, making jokes about my little internet thing, the work I was doing had literally saved my father's career. Dad, who lectured me about getting serious about my life, had kept his job because of my investment. Dad, who worried I was living in fantasy land, was thriving because I had turned fantasy into reality. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I want you to create a detailed report on the Mid-Atlantic Partnership. Include everything: the financial impact, the workforce implications, the operational improvements. I want numbers, testimonials, the full picture." "Absolutely. Any particular angle you want me to focus on?" "I want to understand the human element. The people whose careers were saved, whose livelihoods were protected. Make it personal." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, processing what I discovered. For months, I'd been carrying the secret of my success like a burden, wanting to share it but not knowing how. Now I was carrying something even heavier: the knowledge that my success had directly impacted my family in ways they couldn't imagine. I thought about that morning's brunch, about Dad's disappointed sighs and concerned lectures, about how he'd told me I needed to get serious about my life while sitting at a table paid for by a job I had saved. The report Sarah sent me 3 days later was devastating in its thoroughness. Harold Cole hadn't just kept his job, he'd been promoted. The efficiency improvements from Urban Flow's technology had made his department so successful that the parent company had made him regional operations supervisor, with a 25% salary increase and expanded responsibilities. Dad had gotten the biggest promotion of his career because of me, and he had no idea. I printed out the report and kept it in my desk drawer, reading it whenever the weight of family brunches became too much to bear. Every time Dad lectured me about responsibility, every time Marcus made jokes about my internet business, every time David suggested I needed to get a real job, I would think about those pages. Harold Cole, Senior Operations Coordinator turned Regional Operations Supervisor. Saved from layoffs by anonymous investment from Indigo Spark. Career revitalized by optimization technology purchased with my $2 million investment. Some victories are better when they're quiet, I told myself. But keeping this particular victory quiet was becoming the hardest thing I'd ever done. 2 weeks later, I was back at the family brunch table, the weight of my secret pressing down on me like a physical force. Every bite of Mom's homemade pancakes tasted like cardboard. Every sip of orange juice felt like swallowing glass. I kept thinking about that report in my desk drawer, about the promotion Dad had earned because of work he thought was worthless. "So, Imani," my cousin Brianna said, twirling her fork through her fruit salad, "are you still playing around with that computer stuff? What was it again? Selling Wi-Fi to cats or something?" The table erupted in laughter, just like it always did. Uncle Raymond nearly choked on his coffee. Aunt Gloria covered her mouth, trying to hide her giggles. Even Mom smiled, shaking her head like Brianna had just told the most clever joke in the world. "It's not Wi-Fi to cats," I said quietly, my voice barely audible over their amusement. "Oh, right," Brianna continued, clearly enjoying her moment as the family comedian. "It's that angel investor thing. Like you're some kind of business mogul making million-dollar deals from your laptop." She made exaggerated air quotes with her fingers. "Very impressive, cousin." Marcus leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie. "You know, Imani, there's nothing wrong with having hobbies. I play golf on weekends, David collects vintage watches. But at some point, you have to separate fantasy from reality." "Exactly," David chimed in, cutting into his eggs Benedict with surgical precision. "Angel investing requires serious capital. We're talking hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. You need connections, experience, a proven track record. It's not something you just decide to do one day." I gripped my coffee mug tighter, feeling the ceramic warm against my palms. If only they knew that while David was explaining angel investing to me, I had $12 million in unrealized gains sitting in my portfolio. If only they knew that the connections he was talking about called me for advice. "The angel investors I've read about in my MBA program," David continued, clearly enjoying his role as the family's business expert. "They're usually former executives or tech entrepreneurs who made their money first, then started investing. They don't just appear out of nowhere." Dad nodded approvingly. "That's what I keep trying to tell her. You can't skip steps in business. You have to work your way up, gain experience, build credibility." The irony was suffocating. Dad was giving me career advice while sitting in a chair paid for by a salary I had saved. He was lecturing me about building credibility while wearing a shirt he could afford because of my investment decisions. "Speaking of work," Dad continued, his voice taking on that proud tone I'd heard so many times, "I got some great news this week. They're expanding my department again. 3rd time this year." "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "The parent company is so impressed with our efficiency numbers that they're using us as a model for other regions. Apparently, we're 30% more efficient than we were last year." Dad straightened his shoulders. "My supervisor says I'm in line for another promotion if we keep these numbers up." I stared at my plate, moving pancake pieces around with my fork. 30% more efficient. The exact number from Sarah Chen's report. The exact improvement that Urban Flow Solutions had delivered to Mid-Atlantic distribution. "How did you manage such a dramatic improvement?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "New technology system," Dad explained, his chest puffing with pride. "Some cutting-edge logistics software that revolutionized how we handle deliveries. I was actually one of the first to embrace it, helped train the other coordinators. Management noticed my leadership during the transition." I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell them everything. I wanted to pull out my phone and show them the bank transfers, the investment documents, the reports that proved I was the reason Dad's career was flourishing. Instead, I smiled. That same smile I'd perfected over years of these brunches. "That's really great, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I'm happy for you." "See," Dad said, turning to address the whole table. "That's what hard work and dedication look like. Real results from real effort." Brianna smirked. "Unlike some people's imaginary business ventures." The laughter started again, but this time it felt different. Sharper. More cutting. I could feel my composure starting to crack, the careful mask I wore beginning to slip. You know what I think? Uncle Raymond said, pointing his fork at me. I think you should ask your dad for advice. He obviously knows how to succeed in the real business world. Absolutely, Dad agreed. Imani, baby girl, you're chasing things that don't pay bills. Look at what actual success looks like. He gestured around the table. Your brothers have real careers with real paychecks. I've got a stable job with growth potential. That's what matters. I nodded, swallowing the truth that was burning in my throat. They didn't know that my work was the reason Dad still had a job to be proud of. They didn't know that I had helped rebuild the company that was now making him a regional success story. But I knew. And for now, that had to be enough. Even as it was slowly finishing me inside. I was just about to excuse myself from the table when the doorbell rang. Mom looked confused, glancing around at all of us like she was taking attendance. Are we expecting anyone else? She asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Dad shook his head. Not that I know of. The doorbell rang again, followed by a cheerful knock. Mom hurried to answer it, and we could hear muffled voices from the foyer. When she returned, she wasn't alone. Everyone, look who stopped by. Mom announced, her voice bright with surprise. Harold, your boss is here. Behind her walked a tall, distinguished man in his 50s, carrying a covered pie dish and wearing the kind of genuine smile that made you want to trust him immediately. Langston Reed. I recognized him from the Mid-Atlantic distribution website photos I'd studied months ago. Dad nearly knocked over his chair standing up. Mr. Reed, what a surprise. What brings you by? Please, Harold, call me Langston, Reed said, setting the pie dish on the counter. I was in the neighborhood visiting my sister, and I wanted to stop by with one of my wife's famous apple pies. Consider it a small thank you for all your hard work lately. The entire family had straightened up, suddenly on their best behavior. Uncle Raymond smoothed his shirt, and Gloria fixed her hair, and Marcus actually put away his phone. Having the boss show up unannounced was like receiving a visit from royalty. This is so thoughtful, Mom gushed, already reaching for plates. Please sit down and join us. We have plenty of food. I don't want to intrude on family time, Reed said, but he was already pulling out a chair. Nonsense. Dad practically beamed. Everyone, this is Langston Reed, my supervisor at Mid-Atlantic. Langston, this is my family. Reed went around the table, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. When he got to me, his handshake was firm and warm, but I noticed his eyes linger on my face for just a moment longer than the others. Imani, I said simply. Pleasure to meet you, Imani. As Reed settled into his chair, Mom bustled around serving him coffee and a plate of food. The whole dynamic of the brunch had shifted. Suddenly, everyone was hanging on his every word, and Dad was glowing with pride at being connected to such an obviously successful man. We were just talking about Harold's recent success, Marcus said, clearly trying to impress. Dad's been telling us about all the improvements at his company. Reed's face lit up. Oh, your father's being modest. What we've accomplished at Mid-Atlantic this year has been nothing short of extraordinary. He turned to Dad with genuine admiration. Harold, you were instrumental in our transformation. The way you embraced the new systems, trained your team, advocated for change, it made all the difference. I felt my chest tighten. Here it comes, I thought. Actually, Reed continued, I have some exciting news to share. I just found out yesterday that I'm being promoted to Regional Vice President. The board was so impressed with our division's performance that they're expanding my responsibilities to cover all of the Southeast operations. The table erupted in congratulations. Everyone was talking at once, raising their glasses, patting Reed on the back. In the chaos, I caught his eye across the table. Something flickered in his expression, a moment of recognition that made my heart skip. This calls for a celebration, Mom declared, already reaching for the champagne she kept for special occasions. As the commotion died down, Brianna leaned forward with her characteristic smirk. So, what's the secret to your success? Did you just work harder than everyone else? Or is there some business strategy we should know about? Reed chuckled, accepting a glass of champagne from Mom. Well, hard work was certainly part of it. But honestly, we had help. Amazing help. What kind of help? David asked, his MBA curiosity piqued. Reed's expression grew serious, almost reverent. About 8 months ago, our company was in real trouble. We were losing money, losing clients, and frankly, we were about to lose a lot of good people. Including your father, he said, nodding toward Dad. Dad's smile faltered slightly. I didn't realize it was that serious. Oh, it was serious, Reed confirmed. The parent company had given us an ultimatum: turn things around in 6 months or face massive layoffs and restructuring. We were looking at cutting 40% of our workforce. The table had gone quiet. Even Brianna had stopped smirking. That's when this anonymous investor group came out of nowhere, Reed continued, his voice gaining momentum. Called themselves Indigo Spark. They didn't just throw money at the problem, they completely reimagined how we operate. Brought in new leadership, new technology, new strategies. My hands were shaking. I gripped my napkin under the table, trying to keep my expression neutral. The transformation was incredible, Reed went on. Within 3 months, we were profitable again. Within 6 months, we were expanding. This investment group, Indigo Spark, they didn't just save our company. They saved hundreds of jobs, including mine. He paused, looking around the table at all the rapt faces. Without them, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about promotions. Harold wouldn't have gotten his recent advancement. Half the people in our building would be looking for new jobs right now. Dad was staring at Reed with something approaching awe. I had no idea the situation was that dire. Most employees didn't, Reed said. We tried to keep morale up while we were working behind the scenes to save the company. But I'll tell you, whoever is behind Indigo Spark, they're a genius. Pure genius. That's when Reed's eyes found mine again across the table. This time, the recognition was unmistakable. His face went completely pale. You're not. He started, then stopped himself. His mouth opened, then closed. He blinked several times, like he was trying to clear his vision. Wait, he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. You're Imani Cole. You're Indigo Spark? The entire table turned to look at me. Time stopped. The silence that followed Reed's question was deafening. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me, some confused, some skeptical, some beginning to show the first flickers of understanding. The only sound was the gentle ticking of Mom's antique clock on the mantelpiece. Reed's face had gone from pale to ashen. His champagne glass trembled in his hand as the pieces fell into place in his mind. Oh my God, he whispered. It's really you, isn't it? I could feel my carefully constructed mask finally cracking. After months of sitting at this table, absorbing their jokes, and enduring their lectures about getting serious about my life, the moment I'd both dreaded and longed for had arrived. I started, then stopped. My voice caught in my throat. What's Indigo Spark? Marcus asked, looking between Reed and me with growing confusion.
What are you talking about?
Reed set down his champagne glass with shaking hands. He turned to face my father, his expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. Harold, he said slowly, your daughter isn't just successful. She's the reason I still have a career to be successful in. Dad's eyebrows furrowed. I don't understand. Indigo Spark, Reed continued, his voice gaining strength as the shock wore off, is the anonymous investment group I was telling you about. The one that saved our company, restructured our operations, brought in new leadership. He turned back to me. But it's not a group at all, is it? It's just you. The table erupted in confused chatter. Brianna's mouth was hanging open. Uncle Raymond was shaking his head like he couldn't process what he was hearing. David was frantically scrolling through his phone, probably trying to look up Indigo Spark. But I only had eyes for my father. Dad was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't the disappointed look I was used to, or the concerned frown he wore when he lectured me about my future. It was something entirely different, a mixture of shock, pride, and what might have been regret. You saved my job, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Reed answered before I could. She didn't just save your job, Harold. She saved hundreds of jobs. She took a failing company and turned it into one of the most innovative logistics firms in the region. He looked around the table, addressing everyone. The investment she made, the strategies she implemented, the leadership team she assembled, it was all brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But Marcus stammered. But she's just... how much money are we talking about? $2 million, Reed said without hesitation. Initial investment of $2 million. And the company is now valued at nearly $40 million. And Gloria gasped. Uncle Raymond choked on his coffee. Brianna looked like she'd been slapped. Imani made a $2 million investment? Mom asked, her voice small and uncertain. Reed nodded emphatically. And it wasn't just the money. Anyone can write a check. What your daughter did was identify potential where no one else could see it. She found a company with revolutionary technology that was being destroyed by poor management. She restructured the entire operation, brought in new leadership, and created a comprehensive turnaround strategy. He paused, looking directly at Dad. Harold, that promotion you got last month? The salary increase? The recognition from the parent company? That all happened because your daughter saw something worth saving when everyone else had given up. Dad's hands were trembling. The efficiency improvements, the new technology system. All Imani, Reed confirmed. She orchestrated everything. She's been operating under the name Indigo Spark for over 2 years, making strategic investments across the tech sector. She's not playing at being an angel investor. She is an angel investor. And apparently a very successful one. I finally found my voice. I want to tell you, I said quietly, looking at Dad. So many times I wanted to tell you all, but I thought maybe it was better if you didn't know. Why? Dad asked, his voice cracking. Because I wanted to do it on my own terms, I said. Because I was tired of being questioned and doubted. Because being anonymous gave me power that being Harold Cole's daughter never could. Brianna, who had been silent for the longest stretch in her life, finally spoke. You're actually rich? I almost laughed at the simplicity of her question. I'm actually successful, Brianna. The money is just a byproduct. Reed stood up from his chair, his expression one of profound respect. Imani, I need to apologize. I had no idea you were Harold's daughter when we were working together. If I had known... He shook his head. You've been carrying the secret while listening to people dismiss your work. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, I admitted, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was carrying. Dad slowly rose from his chair and walked around the table to where I was sitting. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I thought I was protecting you, encouraging you to be practical. But you were already 10 steps ahead of all of us. I stood up and hugged him, feeling like I was finally allowed to be proud of what I'd accomplished. I love you, Dad, I whispered. I just wanted you to be proud of me. I am proud of you, he said fiercely. I am so incredibly proud of you. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible at the family table. I wasn't the punchline or the cautionary tale. I was Imani Cole, and I had nothing left to prove.